Reading 87 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teachings of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 1. Birdlip, September 15, 1943. The Opposites. Third Force, Part 5. Tonight we speak of third force. As was said, the work teaches that there are three forces in all manifestations, in all events, in all created things, and they are called active, passive, and neutralizing, or first, second, and third forces. The concept of third force is not yet known to science in any distinct way, save that to the positively and negatively charged particles of the atom there has been added the neutron. Science was primarily built up on the concept of two forces, that is, on action and reaction. This is in accordance with our usual way of thinking according to the formatory center, which cannot see third force. It cannot comprehend it, and so a new mind is necessary, a new way of thinking. Action and reaction we can all understand. Cause and effect we can see more or less. You knock a passive table and it resists you. Your toe is active and the table is passive and you get hurt. But the conception of third force is far more difficult to understand, yet it is at work amongst us all, and it sometimes takes the form of what seem miracles, as synchronicity, or the same kinds of things happening together, which we call coincidences. Now I want to call your attention to the word used by the work to designate this not seen and not acknowledged third force. Why is it called neutralizing force? Let us take this point first of all. The term, obviously, contains the idea of neuter. What does neuter mean? Neuter means, in the dictionary sense, simply neither, from Latin neuter. Of gender, neuter means neither male nor female. Of a verb, it means neither active nor passive, and so intransitive, that is, not passing into a definite object. In general, it means belonging to neither of two specified contraries or defined states. From neuter comes neutral. Neutral means politically to remain between two opposing parties. In chemistry, a neutral salt is neither acid nor alkaline. Militarily, to be neutral means to assist neither one side nor the other, and so to remain in a state of relative independence and freedom. In the sphere of electricity, it means having neither a positive nor a negative charge. In mechanics, it means a point where different forces are in equilibrium. Again, neutrality means the condition of being inclined neither way, the absence of extreme views, abstention from taking a one-sided viewpoint, etc. Now let us pass from neuter and neutrality to the verb neutralizing. To neutralize, in the dictionary sense, means to rend neither active nor passive, to counterbalance, to render ineffective by means of an opposite force, to produce equilibrium. The above dictionary definitions only partly give the real meaning in which the term neutralizing force is used in the work. This is not surprising because the term and conceptions and ideas of this work are not to be found in any dictionary. At the same time, many work terms have reference in terms in ordinary usage. There is a correspondence. When the work calls third force the neutralizing force, it means that its nature is such that it is neither active nor passive force, and is quite distinct from them. So it is neuter in the dictionary meaning of the word, that is, neither. But, though neither, it is something. Also, when the dictionary says that to neutralize can mean to counterbalance, to render ineffective by means of an opposite force, this is correct in a work sense, because sometimes the first effect of neutralizing force appears in an increase of either active or passive force. So, to preserve an equilibrium. But neutralizing or third force is a separate and distinct force originating from the first trinity, or triad of forces, which create the first order of worlds at the note C in the ray of creation, and give rise to all subsequent levels of creation by reduplication. In the first order of created worlds, 3 forces, and no more, act, and they reflect the will of the Absolute, but in 3 forms. In the second order of worlds, 6 forces, that is, 2 triads, act, and so on, until at the level of our far down Earth, 48 forces, that is, 16 triads, act, far removed from the will of the Absolute, and so mechanical by comparison. For it is the interaction and crisscrossing of all these forces that produce both the complications and the mechanical limitations of our existence in this extremity of the universe. No freedom down here is possible. Whatever social laws are made because of these forces or laws. To speak of freedom is impossible. But a man in himself, by work on himself, can pass under fewer laws. In order that this may take place, the first thing he must do is to remember himself. In life, a man does not remember himself. It is from this point of view that I wish to speak to you about the third force tonight. The point where a man can begin to become more free lies between the opposites, in the region of the middle of the pendulum swing. And by the act of remembering himself, he begins to approach this place, psychologically speaking. It would be impossible to describe all the different ways of remembering oneself, even if one knew them. The emotional realization of our position on this minute, far down, insignificant planet, of the unimportance of our personal existences, can bring about some degree of self-remembering. Sometimes, merely looking externally in the heavens at night at the myriads of stars produces a momentary state akin to self-remembering. By withdrawing us from personal feelings. Everything that takes force from personality may bring about a trace of self-remembering. But it is the recognition of the taste of the state that is important. For it is in this state, and only in this state, that help can reach us. The feeling of the work and all the background of esoteric teaching can bring about a state of self-remembering, and it is to the development of the mental and emotional evaluation of the work that the power of self-remembering eventually belongs. Apart from transient forms induced more or less by accident. The increasing feeling of the work as stronger than life and all its ups and downs, and swinging to and fro between the opposites, brings about a state of self-remembering that is not due to chance, nor is merely a fleeting experience. But for a very long time we mix the work with our associations, with the machine of personality which is driven by life and reacts to it mechanically. And this is inevitable because only a gradual separation is possible. A person cannot be torn suddenly away from personality. It would destroy him. So even though we try to work, we identify with the reactions of personality which seem more distinct and real, or more neutral, as we say. At the same time, we may know well enough that we should remember ourselves and even want to do so, and are unable to do so. We are unable to because we are identified with the reactions of personality. We view the incident, whatever it may be, through personality, that is, through all the attitudes, buffers, associations, pretenses, pictures, negative emotions, and so on. In short, through all the typical reactions that belong to our personally acquired personality. That is, we see it from the life point of view and not from the work point of view. And this, though we are not forgetting the work, and are even trying to work. Now, If we are identified with the reactions of our personality and at the same time try to remember ourselves, we find it impossible. To be identified and to be in a state of self-remembering is impossible. It is not merely that the taste of each is contradictory. It is rather that the two states are incompatible. The more identified we are, the more are we in life under the mechanical laws of this planet. The more we are in a state of self-remembering, the more are we under conscious influences. In the work, the idea of self-remembering, that is, the third state of consciousness, where help can only reach us, is always given in conjunction with non-identifying. The work, as third force, reaches us only when we are relatively awake, that is, in some degree of self-remembering. The original idea of prayer was to put us in a state of self-remembering, to let go of our troubles, or as it were, to ask for help and acknowledge our powerlessness to do. But prayer in this sense is very difficult. To pray mechanically or violently or tragically or out of duty or piously cannot give results. Prayer can only be answered when all three centers cooperate. And the three centers can only cooperate when they are in focus. And this is when we are somewhere in the middle of the pendulum swing and not one-sided. The act of self-remembering is an attempt to put us somewhere in the middle of this swing. Being in the middle is to be in the state of self-remembering. Working on being identified is separating oneself so that one is not swung from one side to the other. It can be said that self-remembering is striving to be in third force, and that non-identifying is striving not to be in the two opposite forces. When we try to act from one side or the other side of the pendulum, as when we say in life, "This is too much." That is, when we act from identifying, we cannot expect anything more than the usual action-reaction work of the opposites. I hit you, then you hit me, then I hit you, and so on endlessly. For a longer or shorter period I triumph, then by the mechanical swing of things you triumph, and so on. Now you are first, now I am first. Now I am on the top, now you are on the top. This is life, swinging between the opposites. This is going up the hill and then tumbling down. In all this play of opposites, there is no solution. That is why life is called in the work insoluble. You have only the satisfaction of the opposites, which are thieves. Take, for instance, jealousy and its unpleasant triumphs. This satisfaction, as say of triumphing over your enemy, is transient. If, however, you work on your mechanical reactions, you begin to escape from this two-cylinder engine of life, in which one piston is always moving up and the other down, and vice versa. When you feel the strange force of the work, you begin to understand that you cannot solve difficulties by any one-sided and so violent action. But this takes much time and labor to realize. To reach anything like solutions, we have to learn how to move in one direction a short way, but then move in the opposite direction a short way until you get into the middle. This is very difficult. But by this method you can reach third force, in which both good and truth lie. That is the real meaning, and so the solution. Now I want to add only one thing tonight. It is about inner silence. In working on yourself and noticing how the swings of the pendulum go in yourself, and how now you think or feel this, and now you think or feel the opposite, and in not identifying with either side, so far as possible at one's present stage, there is something called in the work inner silence. Different eyes, ranged along the orbit of the swing, wish to say now this and now that, as the light of consciousness touches them and wakes them to momentary life. to a limited extent, one may permit them to speak, provided one has a distinct idea that neither side is right. Inner silence means being silent in oneself. It means not taking sides in yourself, and so being silent. This is impossible if you identify with every I. You may let talk take place on one side or the other, but you observe it and are, in yourself, silent. This paper is about reaching the middle of the pendulum, where third force can touch us. The object of self-remembering is to reach this place, which is neither one nor the other of the opposites, but a new experience, and so a new consciousness and understanding. All identifying belongs to the opposites.